One of the first automations almost everyone built in a smart home is motion-based lighting. You walk into a room, the lights come on, and it feels like magic. But very quickly you realize not all motion sensors are created equal. Some are fast but unreliable, some are reliable but limited, some are cheap but annoying. And when you're building a smart home on a budget, especially with devices from AliExpress, choosing the right motion sensor can make or break the experience. In this video, I'll be reviewing and comparing 3 different motion sensors I actually own and use. All of them are budget friendly, all of them are Zigbee based, and they all use slightly different technologies. I'll be comparing them against each other and giving you my honest verdict at the end. The 3 sensors are the Aqara motion sensor here, not to be confused with Aqara P1, a Tuya Zigbee mmWave motion sensor, and a standard Tuya Zigbee infrared motion sensor. Before we go deeper, just like with my other reviews, everything here is based on local use inside Home Assistant. No cloud dependency, no manufacturer apps, no proprietary hubs, just Zigbee and Home Assistant. That context matters. Let's start with build quality and design, because this is the first thing you notice when you take these sensors out of the box. Out of the 3, the Aqara motion sensor is easily the best design. It's slightly wider than the other 2, but the design feels intentional and polished. What really sets it apart is the rotating base. That single feature makes placement so much easier. You can mount it and then fine-tune the angle without having to reposition the entire sensor. That makes a huge difference in real homes where walls, corners and furniture don't always cooperate. The body is plastic, but it feels premium. The motion and light sensing area is clean and well integrated into the design. There is a reset button on the side that sits flush with the body. It can be a bit hard to press with your fingers sometimes, but it works. Overall, it looks like a finished product rather than a generic sensor. For design and build quality, I'll give the Aqara a 9 out of 10. The Tuya mmWave motion sensor, on the other hand, is very basic. It's just a small plastic enclosure with a tiny hole for the light indicator. When I first got it, I was genuinely skeptical about how it even worked. There's no obvious motion lens, no visible sensor area, nothing that screams this detects movement. That said, the plastic feels durable. It feels like it could take a bit of abuse and still keep working. What it lacks is flexibility. There's no rotating base, which makes placement trickier. You really need to think about where you mount it because you can't adjust the angle easily afterwards. The reset button is inside and requires the provided pin to press. For design, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. The standard Tuya PIR motion sensor looks exactly like you'd expect. Plastic body, hexagon-shaped motion lens sticking out, and a small LED indicator that flashes when motion is detected. It's similar in size and material to the mmWave version and feels just as durable. There's nothing offensive about the design, but nothing special either. Like the mmWave sensor, placement is limited by the lack of a rotating base. I'd also give this a 6 out of 10. Overall, all 3 sensors have decent build quality, but the Aqara clearly wins this round because of its design, its aesthetics and placement flexibility. Now let's talk about specifications, but without getting lost in numbers. All 3 sensors are Zigbee based and designed for indoor use. They are compact, lightweight, and intended to be mounted on walls or ceilings. They all expose motion-related entities to Home Assistant, but what they expose and how useful these entities are depends heavily on the technology inside and the integration you use. That brings us nicely to the most important difference between these sensors: the technology they use. The Aqara motion sensor uses PIR technology, which means passive infrared. This is the most common type of motion sensing. It detects changes in heat moving across zones. It is fast, efficient, and reliable when people are actively moving. The Tuya mmWave motion sensor uses 10 GHz mmWave technology. This is completely different. Instead of detecting heat, it sends out radio waves and listens for reflections. This allows it to detect much smaller movements, but it also introduces some challenges, which I will talk about later. The Tuya PIR motion sensor, like the Aqara, uses PIR technology. One important difference here is light sensing. Both the Aqara and the Tuya mmWave sensor have light sensors. The Tuya PIR sensor does not. That matters more than people realize when you start building smarter automations. In terms of raw sensing reliability, I would score the Aqara and the Tuya PIR similarly, while the mmWave slightly higher in sensitivity, but also more prone to edge cases. But we'll come back to that when we talk about reliability. Before we go any further, if you're enjoying this kind of honest, real-world smart home content, consider subscribing to the channel. I'm not here to hype products or chase trends. I'm testing these devices in my own home and sharing what actually works and what doesn't. Subscribing really helps the channel grow, and if you turn on notifications, you won't miss future videos where I compare budget smart home devices, break down automations, and share the mistakes I've made so you don't have to. Alright, let's get back to the sensors. Setup and pairing experience was mostly straightforward across the board. All three sensors paired with my Zigbee controller fairly quickly. They came with basic instructions and none of them required anything unusual. The main difference is the reset convenience. The Aqara can be reset without any tools, which is genuinely nice, but the Tuya sensors require the provided pin to reset them. This isn't a deal breaker, but it's something you notice when you're troubleshooting. For setup and pairing, I'll give the Aqara an 8 out of 10. Both Tuya sensors a 7 out of 10. Platform compatibility is where things start to separate a bit more. All three sensors support Zigbee, which means they will work with a wide range of hubs and platforms. Home Assistant, Homey, Apple Home through bridges, Aqara hubs, Tuya Zigbee hubs. They are all supported in one way or another. However, the entities you get depend heavily on what platform you're using and how well it integrates with it. I use them with Home Assistant and I get different entity exposure whether I'm using ZHA or Zigbee to MQTT. With the Aqara sensor, ZHA exposes motion, occupancy, and light in locks. Zigbee to MQTT exposes occupancy and illumination. Personally, I've always found the occupancy entity in ZHA somewhat useless because it stays active for too long, even when the room isn't occupied. For the Tuya mmWave sensor, ZHA gives you presence and light. Zigbee to MQTT unlocks much more control. You can adjust fading time, luminance reporting interval, motion detection sensitivity, and even the indicator light. That level of control is incredibly useful and helps mitigate some of the issues mmWave sensors are known for. The Tuya PIR sensor only exposes motion. No light sensor, no extra configuration, whether you're using ZHA or Zigbee to MQTT. For platform compatibility, I'd score the Tuya PIR an 8, the Aqara an 8, and Tuya mmWave a 9 because of the extra configurability. Now let's talk about reliability and stability because this is where real-world use really matters. I've had different experiences with these three sensors over time. The Aqara motion sensor used to be my most reliable sensor. It worked flawlessly for months. Recently though, it started becoming unreliable. It would sometimes fail to detect movement and occasionally it would refuse to connect to Home Assistant unless I repaired it. My suspicion is that this is battery related. Even though Home Assistant reports it at around 97%, performance has clearly degraded. Based on my experience, I'll give the Aqara a 7 out of 10 for reliability. The Tuya mmWave sensor behaves very differently. As long as the battery stays above around 40%, it remains connected and detects motion reliably. The main challenge is that mmWave signals can pass through walls and doors. In high traffic areas, this can cause false triggers. Placement is critical. You need to mount it in a way that limits how far the waves can travel into unwanted areas. Even then, I've occasionally triggered it from adjacent rooms with shared walls. That said, by adjusting sensitivity and fading time in Zigbee to MQTT, I've been able to make it work reliably in low traffic areas. I'd give it an 8 out of 10 for reliability. The Tuya PIR sensor has been surprisingly solid. It doesn't suffer from wall penetration issues and I haven't experienced connection dropout or false readings, except when the battery gets low. For what it is, it does a job well. I would also give it an 8 out of 10. Performance and responsiveness are very similar across all three. They all respond quickly when someone walks into a room. The Aqara has a wide detection angle, which makes it useful for covering larger spaces. The Tuya mmWave responds instantly as well and detects very small movements, although it still behaves like a motion sensor rather than a true presence sensor. It will eventually fade if there is no significant movement. The Tuya PIR is just as responsive as the others. None of these sensors feel slow. I'll give all three an 8 out of 10 for performance. Automation usefulness is where they each shine in different ways. The Aqara is incredibly useful because of its wide detection angle and light sensing capabilities. I can automate lighting based on the time of day and ambient light without needing multiple sensors in the same place. That makes it ideal for open areas. The Tuya mmWave sensor is useful because of how configurable it is. Being able to adjust sensitivity and fading time makes it adaptable to different rooms. Combined with light sensing, it works well in areas where motion patterns are inconsistent. The Tuya PIR sensor is perfect for basic motion detection in enclosed spaces where light-based automation doesn't matter. In toilets, garages, storage rooms, places where you just want something to turn on when you enter and turn off when you leave. All three get an 8 out of 10 for automation usefulness. Power and battery life is probably the most important practical consideration. The Aqara uses a CR2450 battery and claims up to 2 years of battery life. In my experience, it's dropped about 5% within the first 6 months, though I'm not sure if Home Assistant is correctly reporting its actual battery level given the issues I'm currently facing. Because of the long battery life potential, I'll still give it an 8 out of 10 here. Both Tuya sensors use AAA batteries and last about 2 to 3 months depending on usage. I use rechargeable batteries for my Kia and have automations that notify me when the batteries run low. That system works well for me, but it's still less convenient. I'd give both Tuya sensors a 7 out of 10. Privacy and local control is simple. All three are Zigbee, all three run locally, no cloud dependency. They all get a 10 out of 10. Value for money is where things really diverge. The Aqara costs around £11. The Tuya mmWave costs around £4. The Tuya PIR sensor costs around £3. For me, the Tuya PIR is incredible value for money. It's basic, reliable, and does exactly what it needs to do. It's not pretty, but it works. I'll give it a 9. The Tuya mmWave gives me far more flexibility and control for just £4. With proper placement, it's been rock solid. For me, it's the best balance between price and capability. I'll give it an 8. The Aqara, while well designed and capable, doesn't offer enough extra value to justify the price when compared to the others in this review. It works well, but so do the other cheaper options. I'll give it 4 for value. So what's the final verdict? If you want the best design and easiest placement, the Aqara wins. If you want flexibility and configurability on a tight budget, the Tuya mmWave is the standout. If you just want something cheap and reliable that does the job, the Tuya PIR is hard to beat. There's no single best motion sensor, only the best one for your space. And that's the real lesson here. Smart homes aren't about buying the most expensive gear. They're about understanding trade-offs, choosing the right tools, and making them work for your home. If you found this useful, I'll be reviewing more budget smart home devices like this. Real use, real opinions, no hype. If you're building your own smart home, remember, simple, reliable, and local always wins.